Hello, everybody. We are live. It is your WrestleMania Sunday post show. I am John Pollock, joined by Ting, moments after the conclusion of Night 2 of WrestleMania. How are you doing, Wei?
I'm doing all right, John. This is I guess technically the wrap up of WrestleMania weekend, is it not?
This is it. If you want to extend it to Monday, I mean, the calm down is 3 more hours of wrestling in Dallas on Monday night. It never ends.
It is actually really just the beginning of WrestleMania Backlash, I think.
That's right. The WrestleMania Backlash now begins. But here we are to chat about hours and hours of wrestling that we watched again tonight. What was kind of your overall vibe? How do you feel right now? Last night you came on and you were glowing. Okay, it was radiating through the screen like you were on a very much on a high. How do you feel in comparison 24 hours later after this show?
Not as much of a high. This to me felt very much like, I would say, a pretty standard WWE show, maybe even in some ways below standard. I felt tonight, had some good moments, but not as much surprise. It didn't help that, I think Saturday was so good, but I don't think Sunday lived up to it in terms of both in-ring content, in-ring quality, nor surprise. Although we did get elements of both.
This one, to me, when I look at what I think got like the most traction, whether it was how they pulled off the Johnny Knoxville match with Wee Man involved, a mousetrap, Vince McMahon wrestling, Pat McAfee, it just seemed like if you gave the keys of booking WrestleMania to Brett Lauderdale, this was like the spring breakish edition of WrestleMania at different points.
Maybe with a bit less, doors and gusset boards and things like that. There was a bit of craziness attached. I mean, we knew this going into this WrestleMania, though. I mean, it was very celebrity heavy, very sports entertainment heavy, we should say. And I almost felt like tonight was.
There was a lot of fun stuff on this show, but I don't think anyone. It's quite the hill to die on if you're going to try and argue Night 2 over Night 1. Like, I just think Night 1 was such a superior show that you cannot even make a good faith argument about the second night being better. But everyone has the right to their own opinion. I will say tonight they did accomplish a major feat. They did make the 2-hour kickoff show even less important than yesterday's. Like, there was nothing of note on this 2-hour kickoff show other than a really good Paul Heyman promo that I actually wish they had done on television, where Heyman explained he had the same feeling tonight as he did at WrestleMania 30 when he knew Brock was going to end the streak, and knowing that would be the beginning of the decline of The Undertaker, and the parallel being that Heyman was very much involved in Mark Calloway's early career, and here he was attached to Brock's career, and he's going to see tonight the decline of Brock begin because he knows that he cannot equal Roman Reigns. I thought it was leaps and bounds the best of anything on this 2-hour kickoff show. I just wish this promo had been done on Friday, for instance, because I thought it was a really good promo, and I imagine like 74,000 people were watching this on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he just came up with this, maybe moments before he was set to go on air for this kickoff show, just because he probably just has all of this within him, and you could probably just say, hey, Paul Heyman, can you fill 3 minutes of content? And he gives you like a gem like this. So, for me, though, like, the story was already told. Like, we already kind of got to this point, and
it was a minor thing. I just thought it was a good promo, and I just wonder how many people watched it. The rest of the preview show, they had Leonard Floyd, and then Micah Parsons and Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys, and then George Kittle, who was like a big fan, and some interviews with Maria Menounos. That was essentially it, and
some video profile pieces. You got to see Roman do some weightlifting.
Awesome.
That was neat. That was good.
You know what? This whole build, not getting Peacock. That Roman, where's my credit card? Let's sign up right now.
Thing is, it's like we know what these are. They're tailgate party types of things. Like, I don't watch football, but I know these types of shows are on like for hours before game day. It's just a way to have people put the channel on as they might be having a party at their house.
It is a party vibe until the last 10 minutes when they're there at the panel and everyone's gone into their seats, and it feels sad because everyone's left and here's this panel and they're outside. It's like the party's starting and they're not inside. Anyway.
Well, typically it's the opposite. They do these from the inside.
Usually they do, yeah.
It's depressing at the beginning because nobody's there, and then they start to file in. So
That's right.
This year it's a bit different.
Yeah, remember some of those where they would start the first kickoff match and they'd have problems getting everyone to their seats. So it'd be like a giant arena or stadium and like 10% of the seats are occupied.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll keep this, like having no matches on these kickoffs and just
I can't say. For all that said, I prefer it like this. I think that, doing the kickoff matches, I think it just your audience is not all that engaged. I mean, it
takes away that initial pop, of like seeing something in the ring for the first time for the crowd.
I think you also don't have to extend WrestleMania. I think the average viewer is tuning in at 8:00. They're not tuning in at 6. And if you're telling people, like, I was a little surprised Saturday because that aired on USA. And I thought that they would want some wrestling content on that 2-hour block. But again, it was just interviews and hype packages. And USA gave them 2 hours on Saturday.
Right.
So let's get into the main show. Jesse James Decker sang America the Beautiful. And we got a new updated video with Mark Wahlberg talking about highlights of the night before, running it back, and tips for a sequel.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So they didn't just just reuse the video from the night prior that they had been using the last few years. I remember they just would run the same video the next night. So they did come up with they gave Mark Wahlberg, probably a full day rate instead of the half day.
Gave him 2 scripts instead of 1.
Triple H comes out to start the show, and his daughters are in the front row. He hugged Gable Steveson, who apparently is friends with Damon Kemp from NXT because they were together in the front row.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I wonder if they go way back together. Or if maybe they just met for the first time.
I'm sure they're quite good friends, yes.
This was a pretty sustained reaction to the point that I wonder if, like, Sheamus was looking at his clock already or his watch.
For the new day.
Yeah, at like 10 after 8. So Hunter's got his wrestling boots. He places them down in the center of the ring, signifying the retirement. The crowd is chanting for him. He's giving the too sweet sign, and he thanks the fans and just welcomes everyone to WrestleMania. The pyro goes off, and that was it. It was just kind of just signifying what everyone knew, and seeing Hunter on, we saw him on NXT on Saturday, and then seeing him on regular WWE, on a broadcast.
Yeah. He's had quite a bit of like public activity, throughout this entire weekend, and
it's the most public profile he's had since September.
Yeah, when he announces his retirement on ESPN, we had wondered, I think, would we get any sort of like real recognition on screen, and that evening for either Raw or SmackDown, like they didn't really do anything. They just mentioned, he announced his retirement, and clearly they were saving for a moment for WrestleMania. This was a surprise, not something that they had announced, and just to be able to hear Triple H's entrance and to see him do that water spit one more time in front of this crowd, I thought it was a really nice moment, especially seeing him with his children ringside. Like it really was quite emotional, actually.
They identify Gable Steveson in the front row, and then our first match is RK Bro, the Street Profits, and Alpha Academy for the Raw Tag Team Championships. And I thought they had a really great opener here. Everyone got tossed to the floor, and then all 6 brawl. Ford hits a dive over the corner onto the 4 on the floor and lands on his feet. Gable tops out with a moonsault to everyone on the floor. Every RK Bro match, they get the heat on Riddle for a long time. He hits a bro to sleep onto Dawkins, and called as such. Makes the tag to Orton. Place is going wild for him. He hits a power slam onto Ford. The draping DDT is avoided, and Orton is pulled to the floor. But then Orton dumps Ford and then Gable onto the desk. RK Bro hit tandem draping DDTs onto the Street Profits, and as they call for the RKO, they're pulled to the floor by Alpha Academy. And then Alpha Academy hit a Steinerizer onto Montez Ford, which they did tie into the Steiners. The Profits then hit a blockbuster to Gable off the shoulders to Dawkins for a near fall, and the crowd is like pretty hot for this at this point. Dawkins hits a sky high onto Orton, and then a somersault dive to the floor by Dawkins. Ford goes on top, and As he is balancing on the top, Riddle hits a springboard into an RKO off the top turnbuckle. That looked terrific. And then Gable goes for like a swan dive off the top into Randy's RKO, pinning him in 11 minutes and 33 seconds. I thought this was going to be good. Like, they've never disappointed on television, but this was a notch above the usual combination of these six. I thought they had a really good outing, and this ended up being one of the better matches on the show.
Very true. Yeah, I thought it was a very good match, very good opener to really kind of set the tone for the night and carrying on the momentum, I would say, from the previous night. You know, all six I think are very good, but Gable especially, he has had a real, resurgence and has seemingly finally found a spot within the WWE ecosystem.
This was his first Mania, like, main show match, right? I think you had mentioned that on TV.
I'm guessing because I can't picture anything of significance, in prior years for him. I mean, here, this was a principal role. He got to basically play the main heel of the entire match. And in ring, of course, he is outstanding, even amongst this very talented pack. And as much as I hate that shush thing, I mean, it is working. It is getting over with plenty of people. So, and then, of course, those spectacular closing RKOs, I was a little bit surprised at the outcome here. I thought they might take this opportunity to like either pass it on to the Street Profits, who have been really feeling like kind of neglected lately, or like having somebody turn heel, whether it be Orton or Riddle or the Street Profits. And instead,
I think that's where they're going with the Street Profits. It seems based on what they've been teasing. I think that's the program. They protected the Street Profits in the finish, and I think that's a good program for Orton and Riddle to go with here. And I could see that being the program.
Can you explain to me, like, I was a little, like, I don't know if I missed this, but, like, are three people allowed to be legal at once in this?
Yeah, that's how they started it, and it just seemed to be it just seemed to be coming. It was pretty much like tornado rules.
Right. Yeah. That was a little confusing because, like, in the next match with the women, only two people could be legal at once.
Yeah. I don't know what the parameters were for this whatever. As compared to the Fatal 4-Way. But Orton got busted around his eye, and the Profits pour them drinks in the red cups, and they're gonna have a WrestleMania toast with Gable Steveson, who they invite into the ring, but Chad Gable swats the drink away. This is where I'm going to need some help because we had two Gables in the ring, and I can't tell the two Gables apart because they've got the same name. So this was very, very confusing as a WWE viewer to see two people with the same name, and we have to decipher. So Chad Gable squares off with Steveson, and Steveson grabs the mic, but then Gable takes it away and calls him a kid and needs to shush in his presence. And he takes Chad and he delivers a big overhead belly to belly, and then he drinks with the other guys. And this was the extent of Gable Stevenson's involvement here on the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, really putting a lot of attention on him as a recent signee and somebody that whose mainstream appeal I guess they want to take advantage of while it's still pretty hot. As far as like where he's at today, I mean. We see outsiders, and again, the bar for celebrities in professional wrestling right now is actually quite high. In terms of charisma, I mean, I'm not getting any of that right now from, at least Gable Stevenson's appearances on WWE TV. So we'll see like how long it takes for him to actually feel like a wrestling, wrestler, I should say, or sports entertainer maybe would be even better for me to say. And we'll see who they pair him with, because it seems like, I mean, what do you think, John? Like, are we seeing him on Raw tomorrow? Is this it for him, or does he go away for a bit and then come back?
I think the idea is as soon as he's done school this year, then boom, he's on Raw. He, I think, absolutely needs a mouthpiece. And if I'm looking up and down the roster, someone who I am very high on would be like Malcolm Bivens or somebody. But I don't know.
100%.
I don't know if they want to attach a Malcolm Bivens to Gable Steveson, but that would kind of be my call. I think that guy is a super talent that I would want on the main roster at this point.
I mean, and bring some members of Diamond Mine with him. It kind of is perfect, but it does feel like he's more of a baby face right now.
Yeah. Tons of highlight packages from the night prior that we saw on the show. And we go to Omos versus Bobby Lashley. A Herculean task here for one Bobby Lashley. So Omos drops him in the corner. He runs at Lashley, but barely hits him. So he resets and does it again. This was not a good start. It was really bad.
I'm guessing like Lashley was supposed to evade, and then he kind of connected. I don't know what happened here, but like we see this often. When something might screw up, and the veterans are able to figure out a way to get back to the spot that feels organic, or they might just completely drop it. This just felt like it was almost like rewinding it and doing a retake as if we're on a film set, and it really did unfortunately expose it.
Yeah, this was maybe a tribute to when Scott Hall, the story he would tell when they were taping TV, and when there was a screw up, he'd look into the camera. Take two.
Yeah.
No, take two.
Not at WrestleMania.
We're live, pal.
Yeah.
Goes for the hurt lock. Omos stops it. They go to the floor, and then a crossbody is caught by Omos, and he's thrown off the shoulders, and Lashley is put into a bear hug. And dude, Omos runs him into the corner, and the back of Lashley's head smashes into the post behind him. That looked awful. Lashley is finally able to build up and hit a vertical suplex. He spears him from behind, which I don't know if that was the intention or not. I don't know if I'd be getting fancy with spears with Omos being the target and he's not seeing where you're coming from.
I have to imagine it was. I mean, well, it just seemed more like a setup for the actual spear.
Well, if that was the case, cool. He hit him from behind, then hit the proper one and pinned him in 6 minutes and 35 seconds. This was the right call. I did not see Bobby Lashley needing to be sacrificed to this guy, but I was very curious about the booking because this sort of tells you like this is where we've gone with Omos, and I don't know where he goes from here. I thought this was a pretty bad match.
I agree. I thought it, ended the streak of, I think, very positive feeling matches that we saw from last night's WrestleMania up until now. This was certainly, I'm going to have to say, like, if you don't count, the Vince match or like, even like some of the unplanned matches, as far as advertised matches go, this was probably the weakest thing on either show, if I'm recalling everything properly.
This was worse than anything on the first night. And I would say, yeah, tonight it was this and like Vince and McAfee, which I barely even call a match. Yeah.
But, like as a way to kickstart a Bobby Lashley babyface run, I mean, I think it made sense to go this direction. It's an easy David Goliath story to tell. You got a good crowd reaction from Lashley doing the suplex on Omos and spears for the finish. But you're right, John, as a match, it was not good, Like Omos is a talent who I think, like over the year, has been improving. But you need to be at a higher level to be able to pull off a singles match for the length that they did, with him as a heel having to control so much of it. And
this was only 6 minutes. It's like all this protection. It's like he
does squash matches that are
it's like you're building and building and building, but it's like this is the deep end that you are building him for. And if you can't do a coherent 6 minute match with a Bobby Lashley, it's like, what are we building this up for? And that's going to be the question that's answered in the fallout of this. Like, I don't think you completely give up on Omos, but at the same time, but at the same time, like you do have to adjust. I feel at this point, like I don't see him being, a main event level heel right now. But we've already done the tag run, so he's an interesting one to watch after this.
So again, I think we have to think about this, like whether or not this was even part of the initial plans. Let's say if Bobby Lashley was actually not healthy enough to be able to do this. I mean, would Omos have even been on WrestleMania? So do we simply look at this as like, okay, this is like, hey, we have an opportunity for this, giving Omos a bit of experience here. We're not going to grade him so seriously. This is not going to be the end of his push if it's not spectacular. And I don't think this ruined him whatsoever. It just was not up to the standard of, I think, even.
But this was the first loss, and that's what he's been built up for. Like this undefeated run that he's had for a year. Like that first loss is significant. Also worth noting, no MVP here.
You're right. Yeah, I thought that would be the finish that they would go. But I mean, Lashley winning, they could still do, like, again, like to me, like undefeated streaks aren't that important in modern day professional wrestling. The aura of him being a giant is always going to be there because he is a giant. So you can have him tomorrow, come back, maybe pair him with MVP, maybe just have him beat up Bobby Lashley, and I think the value is still there. So I'm imagining they might carry this feud on, but maybe with Omos with somebody else now.
Johnny Knoxville and Sami Zayn was next, and Knoxville's out, and the Jackass members are in the front row, and we would find out spread at different parts of the ring area. And Knoxville was wearing goggles because safety. Maybe he was watching Braun Breaker and realized, you know what, I might be doing some advanced stunts. I want to protect my eyes. So the bell rings, and Zayn takes this guy's head off with a haluva kick right at the beginning, like just blasts him with this kick. And so Zayn was at another level in this match. I mean, he was fantastic. He is egging on the jackass guys in the front row and ends up getting sprayed with a fire extinguisher by Knoxville. And this is when this match, it was pretty much watching Home Alone, the wrestling match. It was coming up with all these wacky stunts, and Sami Zayn was hired to be Daniel Stern.
What's the other dude's name? I forget.
Joe Pesci?
Joe Pesci. He's both of them. What's his name?
Yeah. That's that's like the film adaptation that they could do with maybe Owens and Zayn one day.
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
So Knoxville, Zayn is reaching out for a table underneath the ring, and he pulls out a table full of mouse traps. And Knoxville starts banging these trash can lids to the side of Zayn's head like cymbals. And he comes back and hits Knoxville with an exploder through a table in the corner and sets up for another haluva kick. But Johnny Knoxville pulls out an air horn and sets it off in Zayn's ears to stop the haluva kick. This is at this point where you're making a decision. You're either really into this match or it's not for you. I found this to be really fun. Then Chris Pontius, Party Boy, comes in and he takes off his clothes, so he's in a Speedo, and starts rubbing up against Zayn and gets blasted by Sami, who just levels this dude. And it leads to a near fall with Knoxville for a 2 count. And this crowd, they're into this. Like, they're into the near fall. Then he goes to the floor. Wee Man emerges from underneath the ring and attacks Sami Zayn. This crowd's having a great time. He kicks him in the knee, and then, I swear to God, he lifts Sami Zayn with some assistance and body slams Sami Zayn. An unbelievable level of trust here in Sami Zayn to get up for this and not get like dumped on his head or something, but he completed the move.
He had his Andre moment.
He did, yes. Knoxville hits a tornado DDT for another near fall that the audience popped huge for. And they introduced this contraption where there is a leg with a lever so that it can kick someone in the balls.
Yes.
You knew that would get utilized at some point here. Wee Man is taken out with a haluva kick. Crowd was very sad by that. And then Zayn climbs to the top rope and Knoxville sets off the pyro, which burns Zayn in his balls. So he falls down he's seated in the corner, and Knoxville pulls out a bowling ball and does the Al Snow spot, sending the bowling ball into his balls. And then the machine kicks Zayn. So they were working a body part here with different offensive maneuvers here, from the pyro to the bowling ball to this contraption. And then Zayn, the part that killed me, he runs away from the taser and they do the giant hand. Dude, I was dying at this point. Like, this was funny as hell.
And it was some wonderful blocking as well, because we didn't see any, sign of this giant hand being ringside. Like, it hit him from out of frame.
It was
perfectly.
So preposterous, but it was it was great. He uses the tongs on the balls and then goes through the table of mousetraps, and they pull out this gigantic mousetrap. This is the stupidest thing I've ever recapped. And he's put into the giant mousetrap. I thought they were going to have trouble with this. Like, Knoxville's playing with it. Thankfully, it worked, because this was the end. Zayn is caught in this giant mousetrap, and Knoxville pins him in 14 minutes and 26 seconds. Dude, I thought you were just going to think, like, this was the greatest thing of all time. I had a great time watching this. I was all into the stunts and stuff. I thought Sami Zayn was just... I had such a level of appreciation. The range of this man as a performer is defined by Dallas with our WrestleManias, from Shinsuke Nakamura in 2016 to Johnny Knoxville 6 years later. I thought this was super fun.
It really was, absolutely. You know, and when they announced this, and when they announced it for WrestleMania, I never really doubted that. I think it would be entertaining, because I think you're talking about two very creative people, including Johnny Knoxville, who has made a career out of ridiculous stunts that are ultimately very entertaining and very creative. So when you put them together, the only question is, how would they have been able to pull it off live? And
exactly. This was like a live 14-minute jackass scene.
Yeah.
And a lot could have gone wrong. And it was... I thought they did a pretty good job. Like, this is what was promoted. They were not promoting a wrestling match. They were not promoting anything. This is what they were promoting.
Yeah. I thought the addition of the rest of the Jackass crew, I mean, really, to me, to me, Wee Man kind of took this thing to the next level. It was, to me, like, so much of, and we're going to talk about this later on throughout the show, but so much of, I think, what makes WrestleMania special is the element of surprise. And for every match, that you might be expecting something, to get something unexpected just seems to heighten audience interest that much more. And in this match, it came in the form of the rest of the Jackass crew and these ridiculous looking stunts. And they didn't all come across great, or they weren't pulled off flawlessly, of course. Like, even the little boot maybe had a bit of an awkwardness to start. And of course,
they had some trouble at the beginning, but they used it later. It wasn't.
It got a reaction, and even the mousetrap at the end, which unfortunately, when he pulled the cord, it seemed to snap, and Knoxville had to use his own hand, and then he ended up getting caught in the mousetrap himself. Again, not perfect, but they had already won the crowd over by that point, and this was a very appreciative audience that was very entertained, I thought.
Yeah, I gave this match. I think you have to give both performers a giant hand. They go to more replays from the first night and on to the Fatal 4-Way with Queen Zelina and Carmella against Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, Sasha Banks and Naomi, and Natalya and Shayna Baszler for the women's tag titles. Some of the entrances here, we had Sasha come out in a green Lamborghini that Naomi hopped into as they drove across the stage. Liv Morgan was out as Catwoman, and then Rhea Ripley comes out, and Graves thinks that she is dressed as Donnie Darko, and Saxton says, I think she's going for Batman.
Yeah, I mean, could it be Donnie Darko? I don't know. They seem more like bunny ears than bat ears.
Yeah, that is what it seemed like as well. Graves promises a celebration with Carmella that the audience has never seen before. So they were going back, I guess, to the live sex tease here, which would not happen.
Maybe it'll take place on their YouTube show because nobody's watching that.
Possible. So, the match they got more time than I thought. They ended up with almost 11 minutes here. And early on, there was Liv hit Oblivion to Sasha, but she's not the legal woman, so Natalya comes in and attacks. You have Baszler and Carmella arguing after she had tagged herself in. Zelina hit a code red. Then Naomi hit a rear view to Natalya. And we see Banks and Naomi hit a double eat defeat onto Liv Morgan. All 8 are in the ring, and in opposite corners, they execute Towers of Doom with Liv and Rhea sending each side off from each corner. So all 8 women are down, and we see a riptide into the double knees of Liv onto Naomi, but Sasha makes the save for her partner. A heart attack gets stopped by Zelina, who pulls Natalya down to the floor, and then Naomi lands a kick. Banks hits a frog splash, but Carmella kicks out. She moves to the Banks statement. Zelina pulls Carmella to the floor. There's a Meteora. And then our finish sees Naomi and Sasha alone with Carmella. And Naomi lifts her up, and Banks comes off the rope, rolls into a code breaker for this double team maneuver of theirs. And Sasha pins Carmella in 10 minutes and 51 seconds. So Sasha and Naomi, they won all their matches in the lead up to this. They put the titles on them. What a novel concept. And I thought they really sold the idea that these titles meant something when they won. Like, Sasha was nearly in tears here winning this. So I don't know if this is the match that people are necessarily going to remember from this second night, but I would say they got more time than I thought. And there were a lot of bodies in this match. It's tough when you have 8 people, but they seem to make the best of it.
They seem to, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, maybe comparing this to previous matches like this for the Women's Championship, which in the past have just really kind of felt like excuses to, have more people in there just so they get some airtime. And this certainly was like, kind of partially that as well. I thought we actually got more match than I was expecting. Overall, yeah, like, and it really helped by having a superstar in there, like a main event level superstar, and Sasha Banks, who I think held most of this crowd's interest. I can't say, like, overall though I liked the match. It was, to me, not worthy of, I think, the standard that had been set for WrestleMania up until this point from the prior 2 nights. This to me felt like anything you could have seen on a B pay-per-view or a main event of a SmackDown. And I think overall for me, my interest was certainly hurt by the heels being so poor. Carmella and Zelina have been just portrayed as, like, people who, are just not serious threats whatsoever, and these tag team belts I think have so little value attached to them. You're right, like, Sasha crying is probably doing a whole lot of, to make that perception change, but during the match itself I sensed in myself and within the audience not that much desire to even see, a fan favorite like Sasha and Naomi win, because these belts they're in need of a lot of rehabbing.
Yeah, I think that in a setting where you just isolate who are our two most over teams that we're going to utilize, and you give them 11 minutes, I think that they would have had a much higher chance, I think, of having a match that would be viewed as more significant. I think it was tough when you're putting 8 people into this on top of it, and you're trying to give everyone a little bit of spotlight throughout this before the end.
If they get to a rematch for Backlash, I would love to see Liv and Rhea versus Sasha and Naomi. I think that would be great.
AJ Styles against Edge. So at the beginning here, AJ comes out and the pyro goes off, and all of a sudden he's bleeding from his temple on his way down the ramp. I don't know what the hell happened here.
So there was a clip that ended up finding its way onto Twitter where he basically walked into the star on the ramp, like that they walk under. So his music plays and he gets basically clotheslined or punched in the face by the WrestleMania star at the entrance ramp. So this will be a story, I think, for a future 24 or something.
Well, he looked pretty annoyed on his way to the ring. Like,
yeah, of course.
It was a nasty little cut, like not anything serious.
Could have knocked himself out.
It was just, my God, they've had some trouble with this WrestleMania sign this year.
Well, yeah, different sign. I mean, not
different
the one
sign,
up top,
but nonetheless, this logo. Maybe
they need to design some more rounded corners, I would say, on these WrestleMania logos.
Yeah, maybe next year let's go with a sun. Let's go with something circular.
That's probably even worse with all the rays. Just a big pillow, just a big soft pillow for WrestleMania next year.
Well, once he got his bearings together, Edge made his entrance on a throne surrounded by fire and wearing this large black coat, very much in the style of The Undertaker. And then his gear...
And the Brood, of course.
Yeah, and the Brood, but it almost seemed like he was recruiting the Dark Order here. He was in purple and black.
I mean, those are Taker's colors, too, aren't they?
Well, the colors have been taken now, I guess.
Bit of everything mixed into this. It looked cool. Looked like an entrance worthy of a faction leader.
So Styles goes after him right away, and Edge teases a spear, but AJ avoids it and sends Edge into the steps after a sliding knee. And he goes for a springboard 450 and lands on Edge's knees. And this led to Edge working over the midsection and ribs, but at the same time, he was favoring his knee from blocking the springboard 450, which I always like when you take that element that you block something, but you're giving up something by blocking it, and like your defense is also going to affect you. So totally. Edge was utilizing that throughout the match, and then Edge hits this huge shoulder breaker. And credit here to the announcers who did the callback to the Rumble from 2020 when Edge's spear led to AJ dislocating his shoulder, and that became the whole focus of this match, was the shoulder, and AJ having to wrestle with one arm and having that history that your announcers, that's something that I would imagine the common viewer is not going to think of this history.
I totally didn't remember it, so yeah, it added to the match.
Yeah, I thought it was a great decision to go with this, but your announcers, I think, calling it out, like that's something, it was great. So AJ, he's even struggling to climb the turnbuckle because of this shoulder, and Edge stops him. AJ eventually gets him up for a torture rack into a rack bomb. Edge is kicking away at the arm, and AJ responds with a Pele kick, applies the calf crusher, and Edge moves to an arm bar, and then the crossface cranking on the bad shoulder, and AJ's got to bite the fingers to get free. And the announcers are asking, who has the grit? And there's a slingshot by Edge into a sit-out powerbomb. Styles then stops Edge on the turnbuckle and suplexes him onto the edge of the apron.
Yes.
And then AJ follows. Man, it's a tough night here.
I know.
On the side of the microphone. I'm just I'm trying to bring out my best here for you, Way. He hits a springboard 450 onto Edge's back, which made sense after the apron spot. And they're explaining that the cover attempt, he took a second or two longer, and therefore Edge was able to kick out. There's a springboard that misses, and then we see a leapfrog, and AJ avoids the spear with the leapfrog and hits the Styles Clash, but Edge gets the shoulder up. A great near fall here. I thought it was like such a great sequence. I was like, this finish better be pretty damn great, because that was a tremendous near fall. But of course, this was because Damian Priest would appear ringside, and as AJ is on the edge of the apron, he sees Damian, he hesitates, and he goes for the phenomenal forearm, but is caught with a spear in midair. Edge pins him in 24 minutes and 27 seconds, this having the distinction of the longest match of either night of WrestleMania.
24 minutes, yeah. I thought it was a very good match. I think it was on pace to be a great match, but I don't think it quite got there. For me, it might have been missing a bit of a higher gear, like run towards the end for me to really kind of solidify like my feelings about this. And I don't think this was better than either the Cody match nor the Bianca Belair Becky Lynch match. But I thought they told like a really different pace of story with I think doing a really good job with the body part injuries up until towards the end. It was very you could tell these are two Ferraris racing each other. Their timing is so incredibly good with their dodges and their evasions and their psychology. For me, what might have hurt it was maybe the lack of build and the lack of intrigue in the characters involved. But as a way to kick off a faction, it was satisfying. But I do feel like there might even be a better match between these two in there.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar reaction to this. I got into it. I was enjoying the match. This very much felt like Edge, I think, is very much kind of structuring his matches very much like we're watching with CM Punk on AEW, where he's trying to tell these stories within the match. And this was one that, I don't think it hit the level of the top two matches of the first night. And you can look at that. This was in a position to be that match for night number 2. This was the one they certainly had the time. They had nearly 25 minutes. But I liked the stuff with the shoulder. I thought AJ's selling was phenomenal. I did not do that on purpose. And you get kind of the angle at the end with Edge and Damian Priest together. Honestly, as in terms of a wrestling match, I would say this was the best match on the show for most people. So
yeah, I would say so too.
But not at the level of what you wanted for night 1. And that's kind of going to be you're maybe comparing this to, your top match of night 1, because that's the position this was in.
Well, so to me, again, so much of I think what carries a match maybe that's really well worked to the next level is just audience interaction. And I think you got the sense that the audience really expected or respected, I should say, both of these talents as just great wrestlers. But I don't think, again, the build for it was that strong that you wanted to see either person win that badly. Of course, the Cody Seth match had, Cody Rhodes making his debut. You had so much surprise and shock, just novelty attached to it that you didn't really quite have here. And the finish was just very typical kind of WWE distraction type of thing. So those kind of knock off points for it. But the body of the match was, very well worked.
Yeah, I can see, when you're talking about a big WrestleMania match, it's 25 minutes and it's kind of your distraction leading to the finish. I can see some people groaning at that. But overall, I don't want to downgrade this. I enjoyed the match. It was a very, very good match. And one of the better ones of the 2 nights. Just, it's not at the top for sure. And then Edge and Priest, they just smile and they put their arms in the air together, and Graves calls them an unholy union. So I'm sure we will get more of this tomorrow night.
They're going to go to the back and, share some of their metal, Spotify playlists, I bet. This another very dark faction. These sort of culty dark leaders are pretty abundant in wrestling. So I want to see if they can, find a twist on it at least.
Yeah. Maybe they can create some trios titles for this group.
Why?
For Edge, Damian, and Priest.
That's great. Yeah, sure.
WrestleMania Backlash, Way's favorite pay-per-view of the year, is happening on Sunday, May the 8th, a rare Sunday WWE pay-per-view. And then they announced the attendance. Oh, this was great. So they put up the graphic of 78,453, and Mike Rome announces 77,453.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oops.
WrestleTix announced 65,653 for those looking for tickets that were out for this. Sheamus and Ridge Holland against Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. They got their WrestleMania match, and what a match it was. Michael Cole calls this with Byron Saxton because Pat's getting ready for his match. New Day come out in Big E-inspired gear from when he won the championship last year. And they start fighting before the bell. And, okay, so we always joke about who gets hit with the Pitbull moniker. Butch's gimmick is that he literally is a pit bull. And Sheamus is the owner, literally pulling him by the collar to not attack the strangers.
He's got a dog's brain and a human's body.
This is just God damn, dude.
No, they've reduced Pete Dunne to like a caricature of like what I don't know, like somebody who can't think like in the body of a match and only knows to attack. Yeah, it's silly and ridiculous for anybody who knows him in a previous incarnation.
Yeah, they also in the video package had to air the Big E clip again.
Oh, they did,
and, man, there were a lot of people.
In the pre-show, they did not, I believe.
Tonight on the pre-show?
On the kickoff, yeah. At least, like, seeing...
Well,
like,
it definitely aired here, and I saw it, and there were a lot of people angry, because I think a lot more people saw it than had on, what was it, yesterday or on SmackDown? Anyway,
yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. Not a fan of them playing this clip over and over. So Holland is hit with the Trouble in Paradise when the bell finally rings, but Sheamus yanks him out and saves him. He's holding back Butch. Sheamus was literally just a handler during this match. Woods fires up, takes the straps down, low-end flatliner to Holland, and then Kofi comes off the steps into a brogue kick on the floor. Butch distracts Woods, who turns around into a brogue kick, and he's hit with Northern Grit. So Ridge Holland pins Woods a minute 44 that they got. So,
wow,
man, they just crammed this thing into the show, and there you go. Like, that's why I don't think you could get upset about last night that they dropped this. This was nothing, and if anything, it was like they're dedicating this to Big E. They've got his gear, and then they get beat in 2 minutes. So I guess they're going to continue this program, but it was like there was nothing to speak about here other than just watching Butch, which was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to kind of consider this to be the worst match on either show, like, I wouldn't argue with you. Some people might prefer the Omos Lashley match to this one. It certainly had more value than this, I think we know, like, the original intent was for this to be the New Day reunion. And as soon as Big E, was unfortunately not a part of the show, this match certainly lost a lot of its value. It was, of course, nice to see the New Day come out with their Big E-inspired outfits. And it's really just seemed to be the entire point of the segment, because the match itself was really nothing. In fact, like, seeing them in the match, it felt a bit awkward. Like, there's a moment where, like, Kofi was about to, like, get on the top rope, Butch distracted him, and then he, like, dove for nothing. I don't know. It just looked, unfortunately, like, a little bit uncharacteristically not very smooth for, a New Day match, and a Sheamus match, which is usually excellent. So, I mean, in 2 minutes, how much can you really do? But
yeah, it was like this wasn't even a television match. They would have had more time on television for this than what they got. Like a minute 44. Like there was just nothing to this. Mm-hmm. They just went over the Hall of Fame inductees, and then Undertaker had another entrance in front of the crowd, and then as he's walking to the back, he looks back and says thank you. And I guess we will see if when they have another Undertaker appearance, because there's really no kind of reason for it. Like, he's not someone that you expect to just come back as some kind of authority figure or a manager, or, I mean, unless he just pops up and delivers a choke slam sometime. Like, this really does kind of close the book on the Undertaker character.
For this guy, are you kidding me, John? Come on. He'll be back, like, next month. Are you kidding? He's never gonna, like, he's not. I don't know if he'll ever wrestle again, but, like, to do the entrance and to the walk, to feel the vibe of this crowd. I mean, I can't imagine this was the last.
He's definitely one that I think you pause on, having a last match, because he is one that, I mean, if asked, he'll do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
This one is it reminds me very much of Ric Flair when they did his retirement in WWE, and he was ready to come back. It was the company that wanted to honor the retirement. So, I mean, he probably should not be wrestling, but it's also one where, hey, when you're in a pinch, you've got a Saudi Arabia show or something, Undertaker is always a card you can play, and you know that he'll be there if you want him. Jefferson White of Yellowstone is there. Was he there the night before? I thought you mentioned this yesterday. Okay.
No, I did not. No.
Austin Theory against Pat McAfee. It starts with Vince McMahon coming out, and Michael Cole. I mean, what a journalist here. What a professional. He announces at the beginning of the match he is going to be biased for this match, and he's calling this with Byron. And Vince McMahon introduces Austin Theory as a future Universal Unified Champion. I think that's the naming convention of this title.
Wait, that's what they're calling it?
The Unified Universal title, I think is what they're calling it.
They're keeping Universal instead of the other one?
That's what Vince McMahon called this. So, I mean, we'll see the next time Roman Reigns is on TV, or probably on Raw tomorrow night, they'll at least make reference to what the name is. So, Austin comes out, and there's like all these graphics of selfies that they have for his entrance coming down the ramp. And Theory takes a selfie with Vince, who sits ringside for the match. And Pat McAfee is out to Seven Nation Army with all of the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. And he comes out, dude, this place, they were so into Pat McAfee. Like, he was among the biggest stars on this show, which is saying something when you consider the star power.
It's him and Wee Man. Biggest stars on the show. Yeah.
There you go. It's the next generation all over again.
Yeah. So he comes out to Seven Nation Army like for all the telecasts, in dark, but it's a great entrance theme. I know it is one of the most overheard, over-chanted songs in the world, but as a wrestling entrance, I mean,
very chantable. Like it gets the crowd going. This humming was a lot better than the Seth Rollins entrance last night.
A bit better, sure. Yeah.
He kicks a ball to the crowd because he used to play football where he punted.
Like it sounds like an all-time great punter. So yeah. It's his signature move.
It was a good kick. He sent this like way out there into the sea.
Better be.
Yeah. The crowd is all chanting for Pat, and the match begins, and he's delivering punches. Theory strikes him in the throat, and then we get a spinning elbow by Pat, and he leaps up for a Hurricane Rana. Doesn't fully get it, but nonetheless, Austin rolls through with it.
His vertical leap is very impressive.
Oh, dude, he had some, like, athletically, he looked terrific in this match. Theory takes over, and Vince is nodding in approval, and then Pat comes back, and they're fighting on the floor. He joins commentary and dumps water on McAfee for doing it to him on TV and bashes Austin's head into the desk. Pat then misses with a swanton off the top, and Theory takes over, and he goes to the top but gets cut off. Pat is shoved down. He backflips off the top and then does a vertical leap to the top turnbuckle.
Yeah. Yeah, like a big box jump,
And then hit a beautiful looking superplex for a near fall. Michael Cole is calling, this is the main event of WrestleMania for Michael Cole.
He was calling this harder than any WrestleMania main event he's ever called.
He was doing Pat McAfee's deal. He was standing during this match and just screaming. Pat misses with a punt. He gets struck with the forearm. Austin goes for the ATL, but Pat counters with a backslide roll-up in 9 minutes and 37 seconds to win. It was very interesting to see people's reaction to this because I could see people on my timeline who had clearly not seen Pat McAfee wrestle before that were just blown away. But man, they have something great in Pat McAfee. I think you can certainly, like, it's a great thing that you can do like 2 times a year, or just when you have that heel that's ready, and have Pat McAfee wrestle for an occasional match every couple of years, because he looked tremendous. I thought he looked great. Austin Theory did his part, and this, like, the crowd was super into this.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this WrestleMania kind of really told the tale of it gave us answers as to like whether or not using all of these celebrities was a good idea. And I think if you took tonight as an example, I think the answer is absolutely yes, because it worked. You contrast this to some of the other full-time wrestlers that they have a lot of time to spend telling stories on, and people have like a built-in care for celebrity, for better or worse. And somebody like Pat McAfee, who is very likable, and Pat McAfee is a bit of a different case because you hear him every single week on these shows. It's the appeal of just a guy who's an announcer as well as a mainstream broadcaster, as well as a former NFL football player. And the surprise of him actually being able to do wrestling moves hit a lot of people in a very positive way. It was probably a way better match than the majority of people were expecting, and it
Not for me. Was it for you?
Well, I meant the majority of people who have never seen him.
Right.
Yeah. No, it was the level that I was expecting. Yeah, I was almost expecting a Canadian destroyer here, and we didn't really get that. But that's okay. Like, it was a very good performance. And, man, just, like, the amplification of a crowd that cares about the babyface in WrestleMania definitely took this to a very, very high level.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to judge in this era because, in the past, when they would do a big celebrity, it would be, our metric would be, like, could this sell pay-per-views? And like the big one being when they brought in Donald Trump in 2007 and other celebrities where you look at what kind of business they would add. Like none of the celebrities I would say for either night were kind of in positions to carry the show. And therefore you go into kind of other things like what was the value of having Pat McAfee promoting WrestleMania on his show for the last month and having his fan base directed towards a match for 4 weeks? What was the value of having Johnny Knoxville attached to your programming really since before the Royal Rumble and having that for 3 months and just trying to have, it gets into different qualifiers of what's successful, what's not. But a huge part of that is the performance itself that you're looking at. And I would say in both cases, the match is delivered on this show.
Yeah, it's the
and I'd say the same with Logan Paul for the night before.
I would say completely. Yeah. I think, beyond like obviously having some of that mainstream crossover appeal, like when you use a celebrity, you have, if the performance is good, somebody that the audience seemingly already knows and they want to see them sink or swim. And, in most cases here, we saw them swim.
So Vince is very upset. He is with Austin Theory and Pat's in the ring and he starts gesturing towards Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon is eyeing him. And he starts taking his jacket off, and the crowd is getting excited here. He takes off his dress shirt, and there is the Vince McMahon G-Unit special. He's got the black tank top, and he gets into the ring. The crowd is just going nuts here. And a referee enters, and they're teasing a match here when Austin Theory attacks Pat McAfee from behind, and then the bell rings. So we get Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon after all. And Vince McMahon is just attacking Pat.
I just want to say, like, you had reported this way back, and they could have simply announced it from that point on. Hey, like after the interview, we're doing Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee. They chose to hold back on it much in the same way that they chose to hold back, Owens versus Austin. And probably the entire time thinking that they were going to do it anyway. So again, it does have the similar effect of like, hey, you're under-delivering and you're under-promising and you're over-delivering. But I think it also shows some restraint because they could have they would have sold more tickets if it was Vince versus Pat McAfee that was advertised on their marquee. And they chose.
There's no doubt that promoting that would have had like that kind of shock factor attached to it of what is this going to be if Vince McMahon was attached to it. And also like there was like that period as well after that interview, like there was no Vince on TV, there was no interaction of that. And then they started to weave him back in with the locker room shots and stuff like that. So I'm sure like we'll hear a bit more about kind of where this weaved from. But like the original idea was Pat McAfee and Vince McMahon, but Austin Theory would be heavily involved because as we saw here, you can't do a match with Pat McAfee and Vince McMahon. So This was Pat who just had to sell and sell and sell. And Theory then gets involved a second time where he pulls Pat and wraps his legs around the post, low blowing him. And Pat McAfee is just like, this is crippling to McAfee. I mean,
it makes sense because he had just wrestled such a big match, right? It does not make sense, okay? Like, but I could at least believe in it a little bit more.
So Vince gets a Cowboys football and he pretends he's going to punt it into the crowd, but he doesn't. Instead, he kicks it into Pat's midsection and pins Pat McAfee in 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Vince McMahon gets his first victory at WrestleMania. He is now 1-4.
1-4, is that right? Wow. Well, there you go.
This was, if you want to, they rang a bell. So if you are going to say Steve Austin, Exactly. That's it. It's on his cage match. That Punk brawl he had in 2012 never made it. It wasn't a match. So if you're going to qualify that Steve Austin had a match on Saturday, you have to acknowledge this was a match on Sunday, and this was awful.
Oh, it was fucking god awful. Yeah, of course. But it was Vince McMahon wrestling in 2022. And so many of the same feelings I had the night prior, seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin standing across from an opponent with the referee in between them and the bell ringing, I had for this moment, because I was not going into tonight expecting Vince McMahon to face Pat McAfee in a match. They gave us the moment, and I was not expecting anything of it, but it was the moment that I was happy I got to witness. So I mean, I had a lot of fun.
It was something. It was certainly something.
And all of this really was just to set up the next thing.
This was all for what was to come. Austin Theory is celebrating and posing with Vince. They hug. The favorite part, there were a lot of favorites in this. Austin Theory's music plays, and go back and watch. Vince is all shook because he's expecting a different theme to play, and they play Austin Theories, and Vince is all,
A different Austin's theme.
It was, yes, he heard the wrong Austin's theme, and then the glass breaks, and out comes Steve Austin. It was, I heard from people there, this was the loudest reaction of the entire night. It was Steve Austin coming out. He stuns Theory, who took one of the best stunners, and then he stands in front of Vince. Vince is begging off. Austin passes him a beer, and they go to have a beer together. Vince is sipping from the beer. He cheers him, and then Austin proceeds to try and stun Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon, historically, has taken some god-awful stunners. Nothing will ever approach how awful this one was. This man literally was physically stunned just at the boot from Steve Austin. And Austin, dude, he was like, I am going to give this guy a stunner. And he's like trying to get his head back in position. He finally does it. He's just laughing at just not since Donald Trump have we seen a worse WrestleMania stunner. But this might have taken the cake of the worst stunner of all time. And maybe that's what will make this such a memorable segment. It actually was better that he took this stunner than a great one.
You're right. Yeah. I'm not grading, like how excellent of a stunner Vince took. Like, to me, it was just like the moment of seeing them try this at their advanced ages and having it go horribly wrong, and visibly seeing a Stone Cold Steve Austin laughing it off as if saying, the last stunner I give at WrestleMania to you, and the last stunner that Vince McMahon will ever take is by far the worst one he's probably given to anybody. It was a memory, and it was a moment, and I was grateful that it happened because, again, it added to the fun and ridiculousness of it all.
And they never rang a bell for Austin and McMahon, so that was not a match.
You got to build up to that, John. We got a whole year to go.
Pat McAfee returns, and he drinks a beer with Austin. I thought this was like a cool moment here with McAfee and Austin. And then Austin stuns McAfee, and we get this awesome shot of Pat dead on the floor drinking the beer. And that's how it ends, with Austin just having... This is like a lengthy presentation. So I want to ask you, Wei, from the high of Pat's performance against Austin Theory to like the low of Vince and Pat McAfee, with Vince pinning Pat McAfee, to the worst stunner in history, to Pat McAfee drinking beer with Steve Austin. When you're assessing this, was this a net positive overall presentation?
Yes. 100% yes. So much of what goes into my feelings of what makes a WrestleMania special is the element of surprise. And for a lot of people, the element of surprise was to see Pat McAfee do so well in a match against Austin Theory. So you already have great points there. But seeing, the nostalgic fan based off of all the rumors, to finally have confirmation and to see Vince McMahon take his shirt off and enter the ring for an actual match, that was another element of nostalgia and surprise that very much elevated the segment to the next level. It was the most, and then to see Steve Austin reunited with Vince McMahon in the ring, and yes, it was one of the worst stunners of all time, but again, I don't really care. It's simply the fact that we got to see Vince McMahon take a stunner from Steve Austin, and we can laugh about how horrible it was afterwards, but we got to see it overall. it made this to me like the most memorable thing by far, and the most surprising thing positively, and the most entertaining thing of night 2.
The crowd loved this. Like this was like they were super into this, and it wasn't just Austin. Like they were totally into the Pat McAfee throughout the whole thing. So I think honestly, like it was for Pat McAfee, it was probably a this was his Kevin Owens moment tonight.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Was being part of this. So this was just a wild segment. It was just this had the most like spring break factor to me, was like watching some of this, because it was just, you're watching this and here's a 76-year-old Vince McMahon being Vince McMahon on WrestleMania.
Ridiculous. Is this the last time we've seen Vince in a ring?
I mean, God,
taking physical abuse?
You would think so. I mean, this was when you throw out, like, he has not had an actual wrestling match since the Brett match until this.
Yeah, it was
like you would think that this would be it, but I mean, you can never guarantee, I guess. For sure.
I mean, even to like get.
I mean, he really cannot do anything. Like
No,
he cannot do anything physical. So I mean, match. You can barely call this a match.
No, even to get cleared for this, I wonder like what kind of hurdles he had to go
I mean,
through.
thankfully, like he didn't take anything. You know what I mean? It was not that many years ago he took that headbutt from Kevin Owens. Remember,
Well,
skull to skull.
It was not that many years ago that he dove off the balcony.
That was 2 years
Performance
ago.
Center.
You're right.
Yeah.
He did the dive off the balcony. So I mean, yeah, by that measure, like this was a pretty conservative offensive output. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, the main event, title versus title, Metallica, forklifts. We've got it all. Just a very regular entrance for both men coming out here. I was expecting like this was going to be, it seemed like this year, like they really went all out on some of these entrances, but this was a very just by the numbers appearance, with Reigns coming out with the bloodline and then Reigns coming out in his fighter shorts and belt. And that was it.
I was honestly expecting a bit more for the biggest WrestleMania match of all time.
Yeah, I thought like maybe, Roman Reigns like coming down from heaven, as from God mode, like he comes down from the heavens, and then you have Brock like in on rides a horse. Yeah. I guess that if it hadn't screwed up that year with Hunter, maybe horses would have been an option, but probably dangerous to be trying that. So Heyman introduces Roman, and then Brock introduces himself, and we've got Cole and Graves on commentary. Pat McAfee, he's done for the night, and Lesnar takes off his gloves. So we're getting bare knuckle Brock in this main event of WrestleMania. And he controls Reigns early. He hits a pair of belly to bellies. And then Heyman is luring Lesnar on the floor, and it leads to a spear through the barricade. And Lesnar's got to struggle to get back into the ring. Reigns hits him with a spear and then hits him with a Superman punch. Lesnar is wobbled on the mat, struggles to get up, and then hit with another one. And he gets up and he's smiling. He avoids the third one and he hits a series of German suplexes. The F5 gets stopped. He takes another Superman punch, but the spear gets caught and he hits an F5 and Reigns kicks out. So it is our video game spam finisher, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns sprint from this point forward. And Reigns then comes back with a spear to Lesnar, but this takes out Chad Patton, the referee. And Reigns hits a low blow and gets the belt from Heyman, so we get a belt shot to Lesnar. Although no blood in this match, for all that they made about like the bleeding and the lead up to this, and Lesnar coming for blood, they had none here. So I was surprised by that. I was, especially with the belt shot. I thought, okay, this is where we're going to introduce blood, and Lesnar's going to try and make Reigns bleed as well. Completely.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what helped things, and the fact that they teased it for throughout the entirety of the story. You're right. Like, it's surprising that they didn't go there.
Maybe they found out that we get only one image of blood all night, and AJ's got it.
He used it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then we're going to do a spot where Reigns' shoulder is dislocated. Well, AJ's also doing that. So guys, they're like, no, we're doing the shoulder spot. So there's a spear from behind by Reigns, as they note, hey, maybe he was taking notes from Lashley with Omos earlier. And Reigns hits the regular spear, but after hitting it, Lesnar applies a deep Kimura, and he's just wrenching on this arm. And Reigns has to stretch and reach the rope, and you have Paul Heyman, who is just pleading and telling him that this is all for your family. I believe in you. I love you. And Reigns is saying his shoulder is out. And it ends up where Lesnar comes at him, goes for an F5, it's countered, and Reigns just hits a spear and pins him in 12 minutes and 18 seconds. So, yeah, he was like saying like the shoulder was out, but I took
didn't really play into the finish.
It didn't play at all. Like they went right to the finish. So I assume this was just part of it. But you also have Brock here that's got your arm and might not have been as careful. But nonetheless, the match ends 12 minutes, 18 seconds. I will say this was the third WrestleMania match. The first one was a classic, I thought, even before you did the Rollins cash-in. The second one in New Orleans was a unmitigated disaster, and this was kind of somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
Fun for a while it lasted, but I also didn't feel it was this great epic either.
Well, it certainly didn't steal the weekend, and it didn't even really steal the night. Perhaps
I don't think this was match of the night. I would put Edge and AJ ahead of this.
Yeah, and for a match that they were building up as, again, the biggest WrestleMania match of all time, it's on all the posters. It is headlining a 2-night WrestleMania. This really is the official main event. I think you could maybe look at it with a bit of disappointment because it offered, again, so much of, I think, what made this WrestleMania so successful was the element of surprise, and this match offered none of it. It was a pretty typical Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match. You know, go in there, hit your finishers, hit them a lot, and that works. It certainly helps because you have two very over characters. But I think when you're talking about the culmination of such a long built storyline, you're expecting some more twists and turns, whether in the form of something with Paul Heyman, something. But instead, the result was very typical and a finish that didn't feel that climactic actually.
Yeah, I would say, that is like when you do this incredible promotion for a match, the expectation is high, and that's not on the fan base. That is on you. You have built this in such a way, and they came in, it was a 12-minute match, and I think it was kind of your standard fare of what you would expect out of a Reigns and Lesnar match. You did get a clean finish. He lifts up both belts, although he's struggling with the shoulder to lift the other belt as well. And Reigns, it's just everything is Reigns dominating coming out of this. I will say that, going into this weekend, it was, the idea of keeping it on Reigns. We both assumed Reigns would win this match, and it's having those contenders ready. And I would say with Lashley winning, with Edge winning, with Drew McIntyre winning, with Cody Rhodes coming in, you do have some options of different. I don't see them going like with Edge, but with McIntyre, Lashley, Cody, I would wait. I would not go to that one immediately, but I think that's very much what we're going to hear on Monday. Cody's doing a promo, and that will be the journey of this character, is going for the world championship his father never won. And that should be a really big story when you get to it. But also very curious about Brock after this. Where he goes. This did feel like the end of it. I don't think this is one where you rematch it in a month.
Maybe not. Yeah. But maybe we don't even get Roman, defending the championship if they're trying to sell some sort of shoulder injury coming.
What? Maybe he disappears for a pay-per-view cycle or two after this. Your champion is injured and he will come back, and then that becomes tough. You don't have a world champion, but you
have Ronda Charlotte, which I think will probably get a rematch. That might headline. Maybe you'll do Bianca and Becky again, or Bianca versus somebody else, but. I don't see really any other reason to do a shoulder injury at the very end of a match other than to maybe, write him off for a little bit. So.
You're probably right. You don't have to rush into a program immediately for Reigns. I think for Lesnar, he is advertised for Backlash. I think a cool idea because these characters, they've never been in alignment to have a program together. And I think it'd be a great follow-up from WrestleMania is tomorrow night in Dallas, Kevin Owens comes out, and you think that he is going to be remorseful for what he said to Texas, but instead it's, I hate this place. All of you, your stupid cowboy hats, and out walks Brock with the cowboy hat, and he is there, and he kills this guy at the end of TV. The crowd cheers. Brock is happy. He's moved on from Reigns. And I think an Owens-Lesnar program at this state with Lesnar as a babyface and Owens as a heel, I think that's like it feels like a fresh program for Brock.
I mean, that sounds like a fun segment and a fun promo, but in no way do I think Kevin Owens is strong enough to be able to handle a program with Brock Lesnar. Especially,
you don't think so?
Well, I mean, as just the perceived level of contender that he is. You know, like Kevin Owens just lost to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he himself is in need of rehabbing before being able to be built up to, you know, that main event status. I'm just saying to me, I don't think that they would think of it as attractive enough.
Well, this also wouldn't be a main event. This wouldn't necessarily even be like your main event at Backlash if you don't.
So essentially, you're just trying to sell people into a squash match, aren't you?
No, I think you can have a competitive match with these two.
But then you're gonna have to book Kevin Owens like he's a credible threat, you know.
Well, I think coming out of this, I think Owens is going to be a pretty significant heel on the Raw side, like a very significant heel.
Yeah, I hope so.
And this really like elevates his status by working with Brock. Brock's on this show, so if Reigns is not there, like who else with Brock? Like you could go back. It's that, or you go back to Lashley because that's kind of unresolved too.
Well, this is why, yeah, because this is the tough task with Brock Lesnar as a babyface. You know, to have an opposition against Brock Lesnar that is believable and credible, you don't have many options. Like you have Roman Reigns,
and Lashley's a babyface now, so
well, yeah, you have Roman, who's the strongest booked guy on the show, and Bobby Lashley, who I think has been booked tremendously well. But who else, you know, can they convince the audience that actually, you know, that can have a 20-minute or 10-minute even match with Brock Lesnar? Because I'd love to know the follow-up for any of these people that are, especially the ones that are involved in these sort of like semi-celebrity angles, like a Kevin Owens or a Sami Zayn.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see many of these characters that are, you know, that were attached to either celebrities or not full-timers that are coming out of WrestleMania and where they're slotted into everything. I think like there's a bit more interest than most Manias, mainly around Cody because of him coming in and what that direction is going to be. So there you go. That was night 2 of WrestleMania. I thought it was definitely a far cry from the first night. If you get into the big spectacle of a WrestleMania, I'm sure like you enjoyed this show. I'm not going thumbs up on this show. I'm going thumbs in the middle on it. Edge and AJ, I thought was the match of the show, but it still to me did not hit the high level that I was expecting for it, and that it was kind of promoted as like this is going to be your big, excellent wrestling match, and I don't think it quite hit that height, but it was still my match of the show.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Match, like thumbs in the middle for me. I mean, if this was the only WrestleMania that we had this year, I think it would have been a disappointment. So if it was a combination of like the two, I think I would still go thumbs in the middle because I would say that there was a lot of stuff that wasn't that great here. You know,
well, that also would have been like 8 hours.
Well, that would have. I mean, the show wouldn't have been this long. I would hope. You know, if it was.
I don't know, way.
Yeah, I don't. Sure, but if you're gonna only pick one night, then I would definitely say watch night 1. But out of tonight, I thought the Austin and Vince interactions, as ugly as it was very entertaining. Pat McAfee was very entertaining. The Jackass match, I think a lot of people were entertained by, and you would have at least been satisfied with the wrestling if you watched Edge versus AJ.
All right. Well, we will now open it up for Double Ice Cap and Espresso members of the Post Wrestling Cafe, as well as your super chats.
Yeah, let's go to some super chats first of all, and thank you everybody for your support of the Post Wrestling Network for all of our show coverage. If you watch us on YouTube, you can send a super chat anytime during one of our live streams. And we go to Dickie Bird, staying up this late, or at least actually not staying up. This is like the afternoon for him. In Australia, he sends 15 Australian dollars. Thank you very much, Dickie Bird, to say the post coverage all weekend was unbelievable. Shout out to Bushby, Benno, and Davey in Leeds, Braden in Toronto, and Thompson interviews in Dallas. Things feel almost back to normal. That is correct. Yeah, our friends at the British Wrestling Experience and Davey Portman had their live podcast, and I believe Damian Abraham was their special guest in Leeds.
Look at that. They flew him over.
They got quite the budget from what I hear.
Yeah, it's huge.
I think a great turnout from what I was able to see for Braden Harrington at Sneaky D's, man. The guy happened to book Sneaky D's. I've seen so many concerts there, and now people can say that.
Could you imagine being in a bar watching that Sami Zayn Johnny Knoxville match?
I would love to experience that, actually. That would have been a lot of fun.
All right.
And Andrew Thompson interviews everybody. Subscribe to him on YouTube. A ton of interviews from Dallas coming on that channel. So thank you very much, Dickie Bird. We go up next to Jake, who sends 225. Thank you for the support as always, Jake. He says, major shout out to John Cena and John Pine, our recappers on the website, along with Bruce Lord. So much hard work from those two over the entire weekend. So thank you. And Bruce Lord, of course, from the three of them. So, and Karen Peterson with the Stardom report tonight.
Yeah, the Cinderella tournament started off today, so Karen's got a report going through all of the 15 opening round matches that took place today. So, yeah, it was very, very busy, and they were all huge help on the site this weekend.
We go to a guy named JJ who sends $5 just to say thank you both for all the time you put into every week, but especially this week. Well, thank you, JJ.
Thank you.
We got to Andy who sends a 450-pound super chat who says, do you know if Brock worked the main event with an injury? If not, it was a weird match. He basically took no offense.
He took some offense. I mean, he was speared through a barricade, but no injury that I'm aware of. No.
That's a pretty typical Brock Lesnar match.
Yeah, this is longer than a typical Brock Lesnar match at this point. You know, when you're like 12 minutes, it's like that's kind of the top out for Brock these days.
Yeah, no news of injury that we know of yet, but we are recording this right after the show, so stay tuned for follow-up, of course. And then we go to John Bender with the $10 super chat. Thank you, John. He says, thanks for the shows last 2 nights. He's a brand new fan. Who do you want in an 8-man tournament for the title that Roman gives up? Okay, so he's suggesting due to injury, Roman might relinquish the unified belt?
I don't think you can separate this title that quick. I think that would come off to me really poorly. And why would he only have to vacate one title?
Oh, he would vacate both of them. Oh, okay. So maybe he's not even saying due to injury. You're right, because he's saying like, oh, inevitably the brands will probably split again. Or
okay. Sorry. He's saying just at some point he has to give up one. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be any clean way to separate these titles. I think the only question is how long you run with this. Like, do you feel they have to go several months of this unified title? I think it would be really bad if they are splitting these belts up within a month.
I agree. Yeah, you make such a big deal out of title unification, you better keep them at least for a month, I hope, if not all the way up until SummerSlam, you know, where they can do, I don't know, some sort of match to break them up again. But you now pose the challenge of like one show possibly not having a title program to build. This is something that's always kind of plagued, you know, anytime they've done something like this. So
if only they knew they were doing this and they had other men's singles titles on each show, and you could have that as an option. Seriously, though, it's also a great chance for them to really make like the women's champion like front and center on one of these brands as like your top champion.
You're right. Yeah, like, you know, you're right. Like if it was Charlotte chasing Ronda, well, that's SmackDown. And Brock.
We don't know where Bianca goes after this. If like you squeeze another match out with Becky on the Raw side.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they play with it. But if you're a secondary champion in the company, you know, sorry. We go to the Nation of Peacock, who sends $2. Thank you very much for that. He says, strong debut for the hand of Mark Henry and Mae Young.
Well, the hand's in its 20s now, so.
You're right. Got a bit bigger.
Yeah, look at that.
And then we go to Brent Nickel, who sends a $7 super chat. Thank you, Brent. He says, great coverage, guys. I think the commentary teams deserve some praise for both nights. We give them a hard time, but they're great, I think he says, IMO. You're absolutely right, Brent Nickel. Like, I thought Michael Cole worked his ass off. I thought Corey Graves had a hell of a call for that Cody Rhodes-Seth Rollins match last night. Any standouts to you, John?
I think it was Jimmy Smith that brought up the Rumble shoulder injury to AJ Styles. So it was the commentary was fine on the show. I think that it's more so like of the current commentary teams. I don't think it's like people have any kind of aversion to any of the individual personalities like we have in past years where there was someone that stuck out. I think it's overall just a WWE produced style that I think is tough for people because that's the role that they have, and it comes off as such at different times. But yeah, the commentary was fine on both nights, I thought, and really good in certain respects.
And then we go to Just the King, who sends $2 to say Dan has a new WWE champion at Backlash. Make it happen. Don't think you're gonna get that.
Probably not.
You can wish. Yeah, you put it out there right now. So thank you for that. And now we go to double plus patrons calls in the post-wrestling room. So thank you guys all for being here. And I'm going to go to you, starting with Matthew in Auckland. You've been waiting very patiently. What did you think of WrestleMania?
Hi, fellas. Thank you so much. As always, this so cool. I just had a few thoughts that I just sort of jotted down. So no cinematic matches at all. That's gone forever, it feels like.
That's okay.
With the live audience, like I can't, like, there are enough video packages on these shows that I don't think they'll do them again.
Yeah, just thought it was interesting. So Cody jumping, biggest deal of the weekend. It really sort of legitimizes AEW in my mind. Stealing their top star and presenting them as they would have for the way that Flair came over, or maybe even Big Show. If you think of the other people who have come over from from other places, like Taz from ECW, AJ from TNA, Alberto Del Rio, CML, or even Luger in '93. Nobody has had this type of introduction. I think that's really telling, and that they're really going to sort of do something pretty special with him.
Like since the show from last night, Cody did an hour-long press conference. He's done several interviews as well. And John, did you get to check out any of that and gain any new insight into the Cody Rhodes deal?
Yeah, I mean it's a multi-year deal. He's coming in. It's a big deal, and I think that you got, like we talked about last night. Like I thought it was like a home run in terms of how you introduced him, and honestly, it's everyone knows, I think, what the most effective utilization of Cody is, and that's what you saw on Saturday. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be navigating a system that at times it can be very challenging. But he is coming in. I think he has a lot of confidence. I think he has a lot of sway in terms of like the kind of deal that he is signed to. And I mean, you can only judge based on the first 24 hours. And I think he's going to be the most focused upon individual in WWE over the next 6 months. Like Bill Goldberg was one that, I mean, he came in, everyone knew how to book Bill Goldberg, how to present Bill Goldberg, and they changed his music, and they had him do longer matches, and they put a wig on him, and they beat him. And so it's like the easiest direction doesn't always come to fruition. And I think with Cody, it's a much different case. It's also a different era, and they also, like, they desperately need this one to I shouldn't say desperately need. It would enhance their programming greatly for Cody to excel, but they don't need anybody to be a home run. They're going to be just fine, whether this is a success or a failure.
You're right, they don't. But I believe Cody is special because I think it is directly, I mean, it's a shot to the competition to not have him, and a shot to the perception that all the talent is going one way. Well, we can do the same, and we can provide just as great of an experience for our audience as they provided with CM Punk being on their show. And that's exactly what it was. It was a way to serve up, for the AEW fan who has been disappointed in WWE lately, that, hey, like, it goes both ways and we could do this too. The authenticity of the presentation of him in his AEW form, I think, is exactly that. So, Matthew, thank you very much for the call. We have a lot to get to, so appreciate you sticking around. Let's go up next to John. John, welcome.
Hey guys, sorry to basically completely repeat last night, but I will say that again, I was watching your live stream count, and you hit 1,000 tonight. So awesome. I hope that that's a big monument. I think that's a huge testament to both of your quality in everything you guys do. So I just was very much rooting for that, and I know last night I was saying that too. But congrats, that's awesome. I think that's all uphill from here.
We don't inflate our numbers.
Yeah.
So it's the legit
Well,
number.
what about all the people working around here, John? Like, I got at least 10 people watching.
I've got several
right now.
people in my house, so we attach that. But then it would all come out during the post wrestling key performance indicators next quarter.
Sorry, it should have been 78,000 people.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but thank you, John, for calling to say that. Do us a favor, if you're watching us for the first time, everybody, hit subscribe. It really helps out our channel as we continue to grow, and the like button as well, if you don't mind. What's on your mind otherwise?
Yeah. So literally, just the only thing I wanted to say about tonight was that I it's kind of the same thing of last night. Like Austin's involvement with the McAfee match tonight. I could not believe it. It was just so much fun. Like I'm a jaded WWE fan, and I had so much fun with tonight. The main event I did not love, but I really did like the whole thing with Pat McAfee tonight. I don't know anything about Pat McAfee outside, like I've never like watched his show or anything like that, but man, I'm a fan now. The only thing I wanted to ask you guys about coming out of tonight was Ariel Helwani's interview with Cody. I know this is a total sidebar, but do you guys, what's your opinion on? He did mention, or Cody did mention that there was a handshake deal with Vince about not bringing Stardust back. Do you think that's ironclad? Do you think that's? I mean,
No.
Vince. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
But I mean, what? I haven't seen the interview. Have you, John?
Yeah, I have seen the interview.
Okay.
I mean, that's what, he had a conversation. He doesn't want anything to do with Stardust, but then he kind of made fun of himself because the first spot in the match was he did the cartwheel referencing Stardust. So it's like he acknowledged he contradicted his own request. And listen, they'd be out of their mind to be what they're paying this guy, that they are going to be putting him into a Stardust character. So I don't think that's a reasonable risk.
And I can't imagine Vince likes Stardust even that much to like fly to this guy's house to bring him into this guy's company just to get him to dress up as, like, if anything, I think Cody would want to bring back Stardust for one night for a special occasion, so he should give himself a handshake to prevent that from happening. But thank you so much, John, for sticking around.
Thanks,
for both
John.
nights. Let's go up next to Rory. Rory, what's on your mind?
Hey guys, sorry for the terrible face. It's been a hell of a week of trying to catch up with everything that's been going on. Very little sleep. Time difference doesn't always help over here in Australia. So I've been trying to catch up with GCW. That they've been insane. Bloodsport was incredible. Loved it so much.
A lot of fun, yeah.
And Ring of Honor. My God, like that was so much fun, but with Mania, both nights were insane. Both nights were incredible. Night one better. Night one definitely better. But night two, like I was like, to be honest, I was expecting The Rock at the end with the quick finish like that, because they left all of the time at the end, and I was just like, okay, here we go. Or The Rock. Yeah, okay, might as well. Everything else has happened. Vince has wrestled. With Vince, I was thinking they were going to bring out Shane McMahon as well. I thought they were going to bring him out just to tease something with Austin Theory. Like when they were hugging, I thought that Here Comes the Money was going to come on, and Shane was going to come down and be like, "What the hell's going on here?" And I just thought it was going to be a massive, so like, what the hell's going on? But yeah, I actually enjoyed Mania.
So you had a lot of expectations for certain cameos, and you didn't get them, but despite that, you still enjoyed yourself.
I still enjoyed it. Like with those two, that would have been cherry on the top, especially Rock. I thought that would have been like, that place would have become unglued. Like that place would have. Of
course, The Rock showing up at any time would do that, Rory. But I mean,
and you got that with the Austin pop. Like it was to me, like it was not teased in the least. So I don't think it really was needed.
I just think I think it would have been like, oh my God, what else are they giving us? Because they've given us so much, and like they're even giving us this at the same time. I thought they would have been like, holy moly, like that would have been incredible. And just for the story as well.
Well, when it comes to expectations, like I think it's fine to have them, especially if they put the teases out there. Then we can really kind of judge them on whether or not they deliver. But the rest of the time, like it's okay to kind of theorize as fans for who we want to see, but it's also important to not be disappointed and set ourselves up for disappointment when we don't.
I was not disappointed. I know I was not disappointed. Like,
it's great, wonderful.
Like it's like seeing Austin come out like again tonight. Like that was great. Vince, I don't know why he felt like he had to lean backwards, or he was losing balance or anything like that from the just the tiniest of kicks for the stunner. I don't know what that was about. Like that was like Linda has she's not the worst one anymore. Trump, no, not the worst one anymore. It's Vince. Mick Foley's reaction to that was hilarious. Like he was.
What was his reaction? Quickly.
Oh, Dewey posted a video of him just absolutely losing it. He lost it while watching it. He was just like, he loved it. It was a great two night one, and to know that they're doing 2 nights next year, that'll be fun. That'll be cool. Yeah.
Thank you for the thoughts, Rory. Much appreciated. We go up next to Hansi. Hansi, what's up?
I can never figure out my camera, man. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Sorry.
It's all good. We can hear you.
What's it called? I just I gotta say that what's it called? Maybe because so much wrestling that I've taken in, like not even just WWE stuff, like Impact, ROH, some of the blood sport, which was awesome. I couldn't I don't know. It just after the night one, I was really amped up, and I'm still excited for Raw because Cody Rhodes is going to be there, so I think it's going to be awesome. Whatever he does, I think that whatever program he's in, it'll probably be above I don't think they'll have him doing like nonstop matches with like one person every single week. You know what I mean? I think that his feuds will be spaced out or whatever they do, hopefully, right? But I just thought night 2 it was just way too much for me, and if people like it, it's cool. I understand. Like I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion, but I was just over the Austin nostalgia. Like you had it perfect last night. I just didn't care. I don't care about McMahon anymore. It's not special. I'm not buying it. I like Pat McAfee. I don't want to disrespect Pat McAfee. I think he's a dope dude, but I just didn't care about this feud. I didn't care about a lot of the stuff. Only thing that were entertaining to me was probably the opening match. I enjoyed the Sami Zayn stuff very, what I mean, for what it was. I was expecting all that, but I thought just everything else was not really that great in my personal opinion. Not the main event, especially this is what people were like AEW, when they promised blood, they promised blood. I wasn't expecting a whole bloodbath, but I thought there was gonna be something more. But I mean, it is what it is. But before I go, I'll just ask you guys this: who do you guys think? Like, do you think Cody will still remain with Seth, or who would you guys want to see him with? Because to me, like I hope down the line, I really think there's gonna be a money feud between him and Orton. Like I'm looking forward.
100%. Like that's a future WrestleMania match. 100%.
Yeah, exactly, man. Oh, well, guys, thanks for all the coverage you guys have done, man. You guys did an excellent job. I still manage to listen to your guys' stuff all the time, so I appreciate you guys for all the hard work you guys did, man. Peace out.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you as always for listening and calling. Yeah. Who would you like to see Cody paired up with next?
I think you can do one more match with Seth. I would like to see another match with Seth. I thought that was. That to me was the best match of either night, so I wouldn't be complaining if they go back and do one more with them, or you could spin him off with somebody else. I mean, if he's going to be on the Raw side, you have a lot, like it's all fresh opponents. So, but yeah, I think you could certainly do Seth one more time. It's a very easy promo for Seth to come out and. Just hearing like Cody's promos and stuff just about the history with Rollins and Rollins' attachment to his father. There's a lot that's untapped that this was about Cody returning. And now you could do like a much deeper story with Seth and Cody that would also hopefully dial in this Seth character a bit because I'm not the biggest fan of the character. There's many who are, but I mean, you got, a really clear reminder last night that this is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And I think with a grounded in reality program with Cody, I think that could be excellent. And they haven't even scratched the surface on that.
Agreed. Yeah. Like going back to, I think to me, like Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens as a team never really had a proper blow off. I think there's still a lot to be done there, either with them as a team or as opponents. But in the meantime, I'd like to see them as a team. And then maybe Cody can pair with somebody else and you do that tag team run, eventually do Cody versus Kevin Owens, which I think would be a tremendous match. Like you said, John, like you have a whole roster of fresh opponents and I hope they don't screw it up. All right, let's go to one more call. This person tried to call in last night, but was unable to. He is a familiar voice to all of us, but I've never spoken to this person. I don't even know what he looks like. Okay, so we're doing this for the first time. The voice of Rewind to Raw, everybody, Colby John joining us. Colby, what's up?
When Mania ends is when I call in as I'm driving from the stadium. I got my boy waiting as I'm playing music and just freestyling here in the van with my whole family. That's all I got. But
all right, that's fine. I want to hear the live experience of being there in the stadium. So tell us a bit about like the loudest reactions and the overall feel just being in there.
Okay. Yesterday, can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay. So actually yesterday, my experience was a lot different. I listened to the show afterwards, and you couldn't. It felt like the Becky and Bianca match was off. It felt like there were spots that were sloppy and messed up. And when I rewatched it, it was like a totally different experience. But for me, when I was there, from the Bianca Becky match onward was just the energy was just dropped. It was just like a dud until Austin came out. But I will say that the magic of
wait, that include like the Cody return. You're saying the energy was down for that?
Yeah. I would even say for that. I would say the Cody, like, everyone was kind of expecting him, but the match, I think it felt like the Seth and Cody match went like, how long was that match?
It's like about 21 minutes.
Yeah, it felt like it went like it should have like ended at 10 or 12. Like it just felt like it went on and on and on. And the energy in there was just a lot different. Now, I was on the floor, and when I watched it back, it just sounded so much bigger during those parts that I kind of curious where they were miking from. But then when Austin came out, was great. Obviously, the whole transition from the KO show to like, oh, let's fight, a little awkward, but and the magic of WWE production was awesome because watching him live, he looked old, and it was like to the point where I was feeling very concerned when he was taking these suplexes on the concrete and stuff. But when I watched it back last night, the cuts that they did in between all his action stuff, it looked great. But when you were there live, you could tell, like, oh man, he's slow. Like he's really slow and the energy's missing. So, I mean, obviously the magic was still there, but it didn't come off as big as when I was watching it back later on. So for me, tonight was actually a much more fun night. The energy was a lot better, a lot of fun. The Wee Man pop was huge. The McAfee thing was huge too. But so you go from McAfee to Vince to Austin was the pinnacle. And then you have to come back down. It dips a little bit to try to get back up to Lesnar Reigns. And it just felt a little forced. And I think it came off that way, like it was a little forced. Like we're just going to go from 0 to 300 real quick to try to get through this, because that's usually what Brock matches are, right? They're not a lot of wrist locks and, it's just a bunch of power moves. So for me, tonight was a much more fun night. I mean, had a lot more fun tonight than I did last night. I think, and then I also think that like the Charlotte Ronda match was sloppy at parts too. It felt forced, and everyone was just ready to see Austin last night. So to me, I enjoyed tonight a lot better. Like it just seemed like it went, and it was an hour shorter, I think too.
Right.
So, was it? I don't think so.
Felt like it.
I mean, we started pretty much. What time did we start last night, John?
Yeah, it was comparable. I think it was comparable.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll take that back. The journey to the car was a lot shorter than it was last night.
Thank you very much, Colby, for the call. Appreciate it.
All right, safe travels.
One last call. I'm going to make an exception for this guy because he is the Professor Chris Ely. Chris, what do you think of WrestleMania?
It was fine. I thought night 1 was much better than night 2. I actually just got through listening to your podcast from last night. I thought it was interesting to listen to Cody in that post. I don't know if you saw the press conference he was a part of, but he kept on, every time he said sports entertainment, he would like quickly say or wrestling, or he would say sports entertainment or wrestling or sports entertainment. He kept on doing that. And he didn't feel like he was saying a bunch of company lines. So I thought that was kind of refreshing from a WWE guy. He said them, but they were more veiled than they were like overt.
Well, he just spent the better part of 6 years kind of rebelling against, the corporate speak, right? Like
Yeah.
the press conference felt very much in tone similar to his AEW conferences that he would, they felt intimate, he would answer and freely kind of discuss everything. But I'm sure he has had the talk with them about, the proper lingo. But I get the sense he's probably working out with Vince like a proper way to balance it so that he retains that authenticity in his own presentation.
Right. Yeah, I think so. And the fact that when he told Vince that he wanted to keep all of his AEW stuff, and Vince said, "Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." I think that's proof right there that Vince doesn't watch AEW because
It was broke.
the tail end of that was when he was struggling a little bit, but yeah, that's all I have to say. Great show.
Hey,
Last
question
night.
for
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
specifically. What did you think of Omos's WrestleMania debut?
Oh my God! What? Is this his debut?
No, they ended the streak tonight. He's now 1-1.
Oh, okay, yeah. The guy is he tries, man. I saw the video of him rapping and stuff. I
Rapping?
think, yeah, there's some video that was going around Twitter of him rapping, and he was actually he showed a little bit of charisma there. I mean, it's just he's not a good wrestler, and I just don't think he's ever gonna be a good wrestler. He's just too big and just moves too awkward to be a quality wrestler. But hey, make your money, man. That's all I gotta say.
This is the
Yeah,
nicest
I
thing I
mean,
feel.
dude, it was not a good match. Like you can't, like that's
Yeah, it's like
that's the predicament of this. Like if this were 1987, it would be okay. You can get a run out of this guy to go to all the cities with Hogan, and he can body slam this guy and leg drop him, and you've protected him on TV and do the whole Zeus push for him. You could do that. In this day and age, you just can't. Like, and he's at like a very elementary level, and he looks fantastic, but what are we doing this year build for? Like, what we're putting all these resources in it, when it's time to cash out, what are we cashing out? And tonight it was a loss to Bobby Lashley, so he's an interesting one to watch how like the next chapter is going to be.
I thought they would at least like have MVP turn on Lashley and then maybe be a spokesperson for Omos.
They could still do that.
Yeah, but it's the dream is over, man. It's gotta stop. It's just not happening.
Thank you, the professor.
Have a good night, Chris.
Ely. Okay, we have a bunch of feedback to go to from our patrons at forum.postwrestling.com. We have forum threads open that you can leave feedback for all of our shows. And John, you just say when you want to read until. We don't have to do all of them.
We'll go through these. I'll start. We have Xavier here from the Bay Area. The whole card was fun. Both nights were most fun I've had a full WrestleMania in years. Keep 2 nights forever. The main event was neat. I liked it. I love the Reigns character, so I'm a little biased. A lot has changed since Reigns and Lesnar last met. I want to put some shine on Michael Cole. All night he was great, but I've never heard him so loose and having fun as he did in the Sami Zayn match. Then the McAfee match, he was excellent. McAfee and Cole were perfect to call that match. Cole got into it, and Pat McAfee, that's right up his alley to call that match. And he says he felt so genuine and really elevated the moment. Yeah, he had a much better performance this year, remember, than last year, where he called the Sasha Bianca finish when he called it as a near fall on the finish.
Yes,
it's just rough. Like you botched like the big main event call.
Mm-hmm. All right, we go up next to Tuffy Togi, who says, first off, thank you guys for all the coverage this week. I tried my best to keep up with all the happenings. I don't think I have had any success without post. Oh, thank you for that. I haven't been a regular WWE viewer for nearly 5 years for a variety of reasons, with my following limited shows like yours and social media. And unfortunately, the 2 nights of WrestleMania were a reminder as to why. A surprising amount of good between the two shows with an unsurprising amount of filler. But much like John mentioned on Twitter, and I'm sure on this show, their use of the Big E replay completely turned me off. Not just for the rest of night 2, but it's what I'm thinking of coming out of these two shows rather than any positives. Not only do they show the replay again, but New Day loses in 2 minutes. It's like they just can't help themselves. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I just think it's a really, like, it's just people that don't want to see that. And I think as much of, like, people that are there that I don't think want to see that. So it just, I don't know why the need to do it versus, like, if you want to do your stills or explain the story, you can go about it that way. I do not have to see a man at the point of contact where he legitimately breaks his neck, and it is not hyperbole to say, like, he could have been paralyzed or even worse from that. So like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see any replays of, you know, when Buff Bagwell got his broke his neck on TV. You know, it's like all of these. Like, I don't want to see any of these. And
there's a way to tell that story without actually graphically showing the actual event that happened. Yeah, as far as them losing, I mean, I have to imagine they're trying to set it up so that when Big E does return, they have an opponent to beat. But then again, we were talking about the same feud where, I mean, Ricochet lost like 5 times in a row to Sheamus and Ridge Holland, and yet came back to beat them. So they could have absolutely booked them to win here, the New Day. You're next, John.
Manny from Pacoima says, another stupendous night. It's great to see that even though on paper both nights didn't look so interesting, I still had a fun time watching and enjoyed the matches. Sasha finally ended the streak and got her first WrestleMania win with an amazing looking tag finisher. Matches of the night for me would be Zayn and Knoxville and Pat McAfee against Austin Theory, and Vince, just for the fact that both matches were just nonstop fun. What do you see next for Roman Reigns? With a clean finish, he will have a new challenger or challengers at Backlash. Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting if they play up this the shoulder injury, and if not, if it's an actual opponent, then yeah, I could see like Drew or Lashley being because in essence you have both rosters to draw from and not just SmackDown now.
That is true. Yeah. But most interesting to me is just how they continue to tell stories for the show that doesn't have a title program. And I mean, I guess now you would expect maybe Roman primarily stays on Raw, maybe, to tell those stories if Ronda stays on SmackDown. If that might be the next big program.
Yeah, that's possible. Like, you could very well get Reigns tomorrow night on Raw. They've all they've announced is Veer, and we know Cody's doing a segment on the show.
All right, we got a David Porges who says, just wanted to share my thoughts about the main event. It's basically everything that I hate about modern WWE main event matches, especially Brock's and Roman's. A finisher spamming fest where everybody does their finisher 4 times, and then a super anticlimactic finish. I'm completely done with this pairing, and hopefully we won't get a rematch anytime soon between the two of them. They basically sacrificed their whole roster to feed Roman and Brock for this match, and it was not worth it. Let's see who they have for Roman, because they have completely diminished any potential challenger on the roster. Thanks as always. Do you think the Brock Lesnar, you know, finisher spamming formula has it run its course?
I've seen it work, and I've also seen where, you know, in this one I didn't think it was one of the better examples of it. You know, but it's one that, like, when it works, the crowd gets really into it. It's probably better than going 20 minutes.
I thought they were into tonight, like they were reacting to.
Yeah, like they were reacting. I'm not downplaying it either. I don't think this like hit the level of like a high intensity one, and I think people were expecting, you know, this to be, you know, this was promoted to be something very, very significant, and I don't think they reached that level, and that's the level they promoted this at. So it was a high bar for them to have to follow Austin on top of it. But it's not like the crowd was dead for that match, hardly. So again, I think it's in the middle if you're looking at the WrestleMania matches. Kate from Montreal, WrestleMania would have been vastly improved if they had done the 2 nights in the opposite order. Having Triple H opening the whole thing and building the way up to Austin at the end would have been a much stronger presentation. I get that they wanted to put the final focus on active stars, but there's no doubt that Austin's return was the big attraction. Nothing was going to touch that. I went into the second night anticipating that the men's tag match and McAfee Theory would be the best things on the show, and for my taste, that's how I feel coming out. Happy to see Sasha finally get a win on the grandest stage after going 0-6. Not happy that we got the footage of Big E's injury again, or that the New Day got jobbed out in 2 minutes. You're telling me that had to be cut for time last night. Do you think that they're going to introduce a new title or stick with the unified one? I think at some point we get back to 2 titles. I think that's, you know, as long as they're going to have the brand split, they're going to have titles on both shows. I think the only question is how long they feel obligated to play out this unified title.
Yeah. It's also a good point Kate had about Sasha finally getting a win after being 0-6. I didn't realize the record was like that. And
Sasha Banks and Vince McMahon both on the same night.
Wow. It made the tears from Sasha, make a bit more sense for that reason.
Yeah. I wasn't even aware of her record.
Okay, this person has a pretty long piece of feedback, so I'm going to read just not all of it, but as much as I'm able to. He says, opening with the Raw Tag title match was a very, very hot start to the show and was enjoyable with each team genuinely looking good, and they didn't split RK Bro. I'm still utterly confused by the Taker segment, although him not putting his fist up on night one, then coming out again tonight and putting his fist up has me concerned we're going to see the man wrestle again. It did just feel like a total waste of time to do basically the same thing twice. I don't agree with that. I mean, you have audiences that aren't the same necessarily for between the two nights. It's not like they had the whole Hall of Fame class come out. And did they have to do it the second night? No, they didn't. But I don't think many people.
I think it was cool to have the appearance on both nights. It's a big character for people to see live, and I had no issue with that. I mean, God, it was what, 2 minutes?
Yeah, and people are happy to be able to see that Undertaker song, and
they'll probably try to do every year to have Undertaker, if he's physically able to walk to the ring, to have some involvement every year at WrestleMania, even if it's just coming down and choke slamming a heel or something.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, that character is, for the better part of the past few years, has been mainly the entrance anyway. Last thing I'm going to read here. He says, McAfee theory was good, but why in the world did we need a several-minute match of Vince McMahon just pummeling McAfee and then pinning the man after his WrestleMania debut just to get a Stone Cold moment? Could have just had Vince Theory and Vince beat up Pat and have Stone Cold make the save. Well, what is the difference between having Pat getting beat up by Vince and Theory?
It was all designed to get heat so that Austin has a reason to come down, and that's what they went with. I mean, it was all about the Austin pop at the end. And
they could have just, exactly what you said, John. They could have just had a beatdown. But then we wouldn't be glowing. The people that watched the show and the people that left wouldn't be glowing that they got to see about the fact that they got to see Vince McMahon technically in a match against Pat McAfee. And I think to make you feel bad about Pat McAfee taking a loss makes you want to see Stone Cold come out and, give him some redemption that much more. And we're here talking kind of about Pat McAfee as if he's an up-and-coming prospect in the WWE.
No, dude, the wins and losses mean nothing with a Pat McAfee. Frankly, they've trivialized all wins and losses pretty much. It's it's not at this state where that's not even part of.
He's a celebrity who's going to wrestle at best once to.
This wasn't Cody being put in that situation, for instance. Yeah. Jay from Windsor writes that he liked tonight's show, but night one was much better. Match of the night for me was McAfee and Theory, and I also really enjoyed the men's tag title match. Yeah, the men's tag title match, I thought it was really good and probably kind of gets lost in the shuffle on this show, but it was to me one of the better matches. Edge and AJ was also a match he enjoyed. Low point was McMahon against McAfee. Vince is just too old, and it was very hard to suspend any disbelief. Even the stunner spar was hard. I don't think they were trying to suspend any disbelief about the 76-year-old Vince McMahon. I can't blame him for not being able to do it, but I blame him for putting himself in a situation he wasn't physically fit to be in. With this Edge Priest faction happening, who else do you see joining? Or do you see them just doing a mentor-protege story?
I think a third person will really round things out, and that it would allow them to do tag team matches, and more importantly, it would give them a chance to have somebody be able to benefit from Edge's name value, and I think his excellent promo ability. Being able to position Priest as the muscle, the tallest guy in the group, similar to how Jake Hager is for the Jericho Appreciation Society or any of those AEW teams. I think would be really great. I think he should take on a tag team. And really be able to have or at least create a new tag team that can be new challengers in that division. So
I'm not saying they do it, but you have had 33 years since the 1989 Survivor Series, and finally you could do Bobby leaving Ziggler, and we get Rude's Brood.
Rude's Brood. Okay. You can.
Technically, you can do that with this roster. We have one more piece of feedback because then I'm done.
Oh, boy. Yes. We go to Eric from Barrie, who says, for both nights, we had the same group of 6 hardcore wrestling fans together to watch the shows. Tonight had a different feel than last night. Our group had a lower energy, and the excitement wasn't as close as it was on Saturday, which is not surprising since last night was the far more stupendous show. Theory versus McAfee was the most popular match, including the hilariously dreadful stunner at the end on Vince. Both nights running until midnight was exhausting, and I'm grateful that I have tomorrow off of work. So we don't, but
No,
we're happy
no.
you do.
No, I will be up in a couple of hours, and it all begins again. But thank you.
Hey, one last super chat while we have it
Okay.
here. Comes to us from Evan. Thank you for sending the $5. He says, just an idea. If Roman does take some storyline time off, WWE does a UFC style interim champion. Loved all the shows. Interim championships in the WWE.
How
What do you think?
how do we go from having 2 world championships and then we got an interim title?
Nah, it's too much. They like that's no different than not having any championship, like having just separating the 2 championships, right? The benefit of having the unified championship is that there is no doubt that this is the person who is the best, and to create an interim to me defeats that purpose.
Yeah, we will see. Like it's yeah. I mean, Reigns and Lesnar are both advertised for Backlash as of right now, but of course, always can change. But nonetheless, we are going to sign off. Thank you to everybody for all of your whatever you have followed of our coverage over the past couple of days. If you can, subscribe to the channel. We are going to be back on Monday night, minutes after Raw, with Rewind to Raw. We will be live at 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Post Daily News Show is back Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are going to be joined by Pat LaPrade of TVA Sports, who is there at AT&T Stadium for the Kevin Owens and Steve Austin segment. And Pat has covered Kevin Steen's career as long and as thoroughly as anybody that is out there, going back to when Kevin Steen debuted in 2002. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Pat about being in the stadium for that and his overall thoughts just on the weekend. He was at a lot of different shows, including WrestleMania. So Pat LaPrade will be with us live at 1 Eastern, and it's another packed day.
Another packed day, and you can of course find it all. If this is not enough for you, you want some more wrestling, always check out postwrestling.com. It is where we have everything. New episode of WrestleNomics that just dropped from Brandon Thurston, talking about WrestleMania attendance figures and what clarity we may get on the situation. So always stuff there.
There you go. Postwrestling.com. PostWrestlingCafe.com for all of our bonus coverage of WrestleMania and wrestling-related events from over the past couple of days. So you can check out all of that. Again, a big thank you to John Cena, John Pine, Bruce Lord, Karen Peterson, Andrew Thompson, Braden Harrington, Davey Portman, the whole post-wrestling crew that has been putting out tons of work over the last week. So thanks to everybody. Thank you to you, Wei, and we will chat with you on